Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Such a great conference, 15th Ibanez Congress Series on Economics, Business and Management. What I'm going to talking about today is a joint work with my colleague Muhammed BENLİ, who is an associate professor at Bilgi University, Department of Economics, and I'm also associate professor at the Department of Public Finance in Bilgi University. So our title of our presentation is that data-driven analysis of causality between current account, exchange rates, and economic growth. Introduction and motivation. So how we come up with this idea and what motivated us to write this manuscript and paper. Actually, this study attempts to draw inductive causal inference patterns for the relationships between current account economic growth proxied by industrial production, real effective exchange rate, inflation, and interest payments on external debt in Turkey. Studies on the relationship between current account, exchange rate, and economic growth have always been an attractive topic for researchers, as the effect of globalization on open economies had been one of the major topics in the economics literature. Countries like Turkey have been running current account deficits for many years, making the currency's value decrease. The nominal exchange rate is a statistically significant determinant of external debt as it increases the country's debt burden. Therefore, understanding the possible relations and transmission channels between current account, exchange rate, and economic growth, particularly for developing countries, may help policymakers to pursue the right economic policies, either maximizing economic growth or minimizing the harmful effects of persistent current account deficits. So if I want to summarize the literature review with some of them, Lebe et al. Analyzed the effects of Turkey and Romania's economic growth and exchange rate changeability on the current deficit by employing the structural VAR method between 1997 and 2007 using quarterly data. The findings obtained from the empirical analysis show that economic growth is the primary driver of the current account deficit. Prasad et al. Concluded that there is empirical evidence that overvaluation of real exchange rates harms growth in developing economies, although they find no evidence that the same is true in developed countries. Also, Roderick and Bala agreed that the evidence shows that growth is dependent on avoiding an overvalued exchange rate. On the other side of the literature and the similar studies, Bermond and Pashaoğulları show by considering quarterly data of Turkey from 1978 to 2001 that the real depreciation of exchange rates is contractionary, causing detrimental effects on output or GDP. Another important finding is that devaluation is inflationary. Similar results were obtained by Erol and van Wijbergen, who found the real exchange rate appreciations to be contractionary for Turkey either. Because of the differential effects of borrowing, the net effect of foreign debt on economic growth is ambiguous in general. If the funds are efficiently utilized and the interest rate on the debt is not high, then the foreign debt will likely stimulate economic growth, which is good. If the funds are largely wasted on the other side, or the interest rate on the debt is high, then foreign debt is likely to reduce the speed of economic growth. For instance, Lin and Sosin found a negative relationship between foreign debt and the growth rate of per capita GDP on a total sample of 77 countries. So if I illustrate the data we use or variables we use in our study, for example, we see here consumer price index. As shown in the graph, the consumer price index significantly increases year by year in Turkey, particularly accelerated after 2018. If we want to see current accounts, Turkish economy most experienced current account deficits, which are prominent in the last months of 2010, which is clearly seen in the graph, and the first quarter of 2011. External debt interest payments show seasonality since debt payments have been made mostly in March and September each year in Turkey. We can clearly say that external debt payments have risen after 2017. When we look at the real effective exchange rate industrial production index, which is proxied for GDP in Turkey in our analysis, we observe from the figure that real effective exchange rates show a clear downward trend since 2010, the upward graph. Whereas the industrial production index below, which is used as a proxy for GDP growth in our analysis, presents an upward trend in the Turkish economy since the beginning of 2006, except 2008 global crisis periods and 2010 COVID-19 pandemic that hit all over the world, which nowadays we still experience. So, which data and methodology we employed in this study? This paper actually investigates the dynamic relationships between current account, economic growth, real effective exchange rate, inflation, and interest payments on external debt based on contemporaneous causal structure derived from directed acyclical graphs, which is DAGs. All the variables are extracted from the electronic data delivery system of the Central Bank of Turkey and used in their natural logarithmic forms except for the current account variable. So the data we study in this paper covers 2006 to 2021 month data. Okay, so the frequency is very good. The methodology, which is DAGs, which are the most widely used in inductive causal inference as an alternative and more comprehensive way of detecting causal relationships, was proposed by Pearl and Spertus et al. DAGs are simply arrow directed graphs of a picture representing the causal flows or lack thereof among a set of variables, and Spertus et al. Show that DAGs, as they account for the effects of conditional interdependencies found in observational data, the PC algorithm developed by Spertus et al. The PC algorithm and its extensions and all the other algorithms that can be used to produce DAGs patterns are available in Tetrad 6, which is a software program we employ in the study to identify, to illustrate the DAGs. So, what are the empirical findings of our analysis? The resulting DAG pattern provided by the PC algorithm at the 10% significance level is presented here. So what we see from the graph, from the picture, is that examining the pattern provided by the PC algorithm reveals that the main driving factors of real effective exchange rate are current account and inflation, that we follow the arrows, whereas real effective exchange rate seems to have a directed effect on interest payments on external debt. The findings also imply that inflation and foreign debt interest payments have directed and contemporaneous impacts on industrial production. Another significant result suggested by the pattern is the indirect effect of the current account on economic growth through its effect on the exchange rate and interest payments on external debt. So if I want to come up if I want to conclude, conclusion and policy recommendation, the empirical evidence suggests a contemporaneous causal flow from both current account and inflation to the real effective exchange rate. The results also indicate a contemporaneous causality running from real effective exchange rate to interest payments on external debt. In addition, according to the findings, inflation and foreign debt interest payments have directed contemporaneous impacts on economic growth, which is proxied by the industrial production index, while the current account has an indirect effect on growth via mediating factors of real exchange rate and interest payments on foreign debt. So some policy implications could be drawn from our empirical results of this paper. Firstly, efficient utilization is very important, as foreign debt can have a positive or negative effect on economic growth depending on how and where foreign debt has been used. Therefore, since high foreign debt levels may be associated with high interest rates, those external debt interest payments will be linked to low economic growth due to the crowding out effect of public investment. As it is well known, high inflation is detrimental to economic performance. As we already illustrated in our study, policymakers should focus on lowering inflation in Turkey to reach an optimal and sustainable economic growth rate. Thanks for listening to me. If you have any question, please refer to my email address or at this such a great conference. Thanks so much.